Hello and welcome to the second part of our in-depth review of Bitwig. We were with Gaz Williams in the first episode and he's also back for the second, back for more.
Yeah, and in that first episode, really, we were just looking at the layout, weren't we?
Yeah, the kind of overview.
Yeah. This time we're going to kind of look at the specifics. We're going to go in and we're going to look at various devices. There's far too many devices for us to look at them all, but we'll look at a selection of them, and we'll also look at how the automation and the note expressions work.
Right.
As well.
Excellent. So what do we got here then?
Okay, well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load in a project that I've already prepared. Beg for broccoli.
Why ever not?
Okay, it's a very simple project. And actually, I'm going to close our launcher there because we don't need to see this right now. So we talked about that in the first episode, how we can have the clip launch in the same view as the arrangement view. And here, so we just play the track. I think, whoops, we'll just play it. Ah, now you see.
We have to activate.
Activate!
That's because we've got more than one tab open, right?
That's right. So the two tabs open. So when you open a new one, you just have to remember to activate it. I keep
So that would actually stop you from being able to run like a bunch of songs and flipping between them active. You have to remember if you were using it live, for instance. Oh, there it comes. Anyway.
Okay, so
we've got a drum rack here on that first track.
Yeah.
So that's actually very familiar. We've got the same blocks of 16.
Same, yeah. And then if we were to
can you screen zoom that in a little bit? Just
yeah,
so
of course. So it's very similar to the Ableton Live drum rack. And like, so what's going on there is, if I was just to click on, say, the kick, it'll open up, and it opens up into like a similar thing again to the simpler thing within Ableton Live, which is a sample playback,
right?
With various things.
And we can process the individual
yes,
samples.
and we're going to look at this kind of stuff. Can you see these little icons here? We're going to look at those in a moment, okay? And we'll see those icons on the various other things that we look at. So now, just moving on, there is a dedicated kick engine. So it's a very simple little kick synthesizer. And we've got a hi-hat and a snare and a clap and a tom engine as well.
Oh, like individual drum?
Individual drums, yeah. And we've got a percussion thing, which is again like in the drum rack. And we've got a couple of polysynths. Now this polysynth is actually very nice. It maybe is the star of the show. And we've also got a little drawbar organ. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm going to just draw a little loop on the timeline.
I do notice one thing that's kind of, that I'm a big fan of, is you can put the playback head.
Set the playback head.
From the body of the arrange window. That's actually
yeah. And yeah, so you can set where you want it to the playback to start from. Oops. Now you see I'm accidentally clicking on there. I'm clicking on an automation line. So I just don't, that's because this little button here opens and closes automation.
Ah, okay.
And as a general rule, it's probably best to
keep them shut for the time
keep them
being.
Shut because it is quite easy to.
It's drafty. Okay, so let's have a look at this device then.
Okay, so it's a 2 oscillator synthesizer, and you'll be pleased to know that you can vary the wave shape of each of the oscillators. There's a sub oscillator as well, and you can sync it in unison. Filter. It's a fairly standard.
It's quite a lot of multi-mode filter. Can we maybe zoom that in a bit?
Sure.
It's very right. So you got
yeah.
Okay, high pass.
Yeah.
Sorry, low pass 4.
Yeah.
Band pass 4.
So it's got like 4
high pass, and notch.
And not yeah.
Reject.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back out here a moment. So now I was mentioning earlier about these little icons, and what these icons are, they're ways of just very quickly setting up modulations. Now if I click on, say, I will zoom in a little bit more, LFO1. Now it might be a bit faint to see, but as I click on LFO1,
oh yes,
like there's a blue line.
Gotcha.
That's applied to anything that could be mapped. So obvious example is I'll map it to the LFO. And what's quite nice is when you map something,
you can set the depth as well.
You can set the depth.
Oh, I see, and then it's showing the amount of modulation that's happening, right?
Yeah,
okay.
And that's a really nice function, I think, where you can clearly see what the LFO is doing. I think it's very nice. Now, if I was to tap on something like velocity, now because velocity is a polyphonic mode, like say it's taking the velocity off our keyboard, instead of it being blue, it's got green. So the color scheme, blue is for monophonic mapping, and so like in that case of a single LFO, green like polyphonic, so responding to different velocity notes. So again, same sort of thing. There's like a green sheen on a green line on all of these things that the velocity can adjust. So
pitch, right? So there's quite a lot of stuff that you can map there. Some.
Yeah.
Can we flip through a few patches there, and we can just have a listen to what the actual thing sounds like as well?
Using the Nectar Panorama P4 for this, because
so these are presumably basses, are they? So
yes. So let's just have a look.
Oh wow! So there's some movement going on there. That's interesting.
Oh, it's just because the waveform is sort of
it's telling us
changing as we're going through the patches. We're just browsing. Let's use the browser as actually, if we zoom out of here. So, as mentioned in the first episode, is as we look at, say.
All right. So then we've got the patches below. Are they categorised as well into?
Yes, and actually, coming back down here, if we do tap on this, it'll open up macros.
Ah, right, the macro, which is your standard kind of eight knobs that control various.
That's right.
Some of those are pre-mapped, and some
they've got yeah. That's right. In this case, it's got three. This particular patch has got 3 macros assigned, and I could just get to adjust to them from here.
Right. Okay.
But also a few things that you can do here. Similar sort of thing. If I touch this, it's flashing, and again, everything takes on
the colour of the control.
The control. Let's make this purple one. We'll just map it maybe to filter attack.
And you can map multiple controls to the same amount. So
yes, you can. Yeah.
In different and varying scales to each other. So you right. Oh, that's quite a lot of controllable power there. Yeah.
Yes, there is. That's a very good point. But from here, it gives us a few options as well. We could just step through our patches. But if I was to click on here, we can see it more as a scrollable list. And it enables us as well, if we wanted to touch this here and, oops, let's zoom out a little bit. It opens up a little, you can see if you adjust something, you want to save a preset, and it's got a tagging.
Oh, that's good. It puts it there as well, because it encourages you. Because the thing about tagging, it's great, but you always forget to tag, don't you?
Yeah.
So
So, we can choose our category, and here's all our categories for tagging. And I think all that stuff is pretty neat. I think that's done very nicely. So again, here I could then choose brass. We like our brass sounds. And then as I'm moving through here now,
it just jumped in through the brass sounds, right? Okay.
Brass start.
Let's have a listen.
You like that?
Not especially, but that's all right. Each to their own.
Now, what I should mention though, if we look on the right here, we can see that note effects and FX, you can actually insert effects kind of into instruments. Now, the benefit of doing this is kind of just to contain them all. Note effects sort of relates directly to really it's MIDI effects, but anytime
sort of arpeggios, patterns, that sort of
exactly,
steps. Yeah.
So if we have a little look at our note effects, we've got an arpeggiator, a diatonic transposer, which I think really
like a Doctor Who kind of weapon, isn't it?
The diatonic transposer. So let's bring the diatonic transposer in, and I drop that in there, and the diatonic, so this will now open and close it, is essentially a scale mapper, so it maps any of the incoming notes into a particular
it snaps it.
Yeah, and then it's quite nice here because foreign notes, we don't want any of those foreign notes coming in, we can filter we can keep or constrain.
So effectively you could make the keyboard only play good notes.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And you can see these little pluses, so we can keep adding, you know, so we could then add, you know, arpeggiators and the like in.
Right, so there's quite a lot of, and that's just in the note side, but I mean, can you drop things into other parameters as well?
Yeah, so let's have a look in our audio effects. Now there's a pretty decent amount of audio effects.
These are the ones that come with it, right?
In the Bitwig devices, yeah. And like, let's say if I was to take a DJ EQ, drop it into the effects there, and then we've got like a, you know, a reasonably
that looks a bit too complicated to be a DJ EQ to me. Surely I thought it just had kill switches.
Actually, yeah, I don't know. That's EQ5. I'm sorry. I think I've brought the wrong one in there. So do you know what? That was already in there. It's my mistake. That was, I'm afraid. So you can keep on nesting things inside of inside.
So that kind of begs the question, because I mean, obviously in Ableton, for instance, and in Reason as well, you've got the idea of combinations or racks. I mean, do you get the same notion in?
Yes, and the parlance, if you will, of Bitwig is containers. So a container could be, like we saw the drum machine earlier, that's essentially a container for lots of samplers, isn't it?
Right.
But then we could do a similar thing. You could bring in a instrument layer. Let's bring that in onto a new track now. And then essentially it sort of doesn't really do anything on its own, but what it does is it allows us just to pile in lots of things. So if we were to bring, like if we were to bring in a couple of organs, for instance, we could drop them in and then another one in.
Okay,
and
so then
forth, and they start to stack,
and then you can save that as a as a single entity.
Yeah, exactly.
And presumably bung effects in there. And
yeah, so we could have an effect that goes across all of them, and then each one of those things is, if we touch them, we'd see the specifics of that. Let's just change.
So that means presumably you could do layering. So you could have piano strings or two synth basses or that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So and also I think.
Oh, and we've got a top level macro there.
Yes, it's top level macro. So that will let us map multiple parameters. So if I was to click on this, for instance, you can see here I've already mapped in the various organs we've got in the same container different things. And if I wanted to do that, with it selected, I could just grab the drawbar.
So that could be positive and negative range as well, depending on which direction. Right.
Yes, exactly. So now, is if I play and oops.
So if I click between the different ones. Okay. So it enables you to create some very complex stuff within it, and that's presumably all savable and everything, yeah.
Yes. So, again, like we mentioned earlier, if we tap on here and this thing here, we would just hit here and we could just call it multi-organ, for instance. And actually, let's just do this in the category. It's in containers, and then we could just say dark.
Very dark.
Very dark. Poly, blah, 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 layered, maybe. Okay.
And that's all done, right.
Yeah.
So that's some of the instrument side of things. Presumably there are other devices that we can look at as well.
Yes. So in terms of the instruments, as we mentioned.
Oh, you mentioned the sampler as well, right?
Yeah. There is a sampler, and the sampler is quite cool in that. Okay, let's space choir. Let's bring in a space choir. I like the sound of a space choir. Okay, let's have a listen.
This is all included with the basic download, right?
Yes. And when you download it, there's packages. There's a small initial download, and then you can
authorize other bits and bobs.
Yeah. So looking here, this is a multi-sample, and so it appears like the other sampler. But if we hit edit, it opens up.
Oh, that's a bit more like ESX24.
Yes, it's quite nice in that we can see that there's X amount of samples that it's made up of. So
can you do multiple velocity layers as well?
Yes, you can. Each one of these, if I was to click on a box, I can, say what velocity range that it covers. So, let's just say for fun, I'll just do that kind of thing there. So
crossfade? Velocity crossfade?
Can't see that anywhere.
No, it doesn't look like it, does it?
I don't think so. But you know, it's just this expanded view that makes it appealing for me. That, you know, you're not having to work always in such small.
But what about?
pieces.
I mean, and what are the quality of the supplied sample instruments like? I mean, they're middle mix. What did you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the sampled instruments I've not been so impressed with. You know, I like the polysynth, and you know, I think that's good. But this is, you know, it can run anything, can't it?
Yeah, so, I suppose so.
But in terms
can you import other? You know, can it work with other instances? You know, like certain samplers will read Akai or read ESX24. It doesn't look like you can import that kind of stuff.
I'm not sure. Not that I'm aware of. I might be wrong.
Okay.
But.
That's a moment of clarity and peace in the middle of everything. And again, you can insert effects and modulate and do all of this kind of stuff.
Yes, yes. So in this case, look, a hit effects. This particular preset has got a whole bunch of things inserted.
Delay.
Frequency shifter, always good to see. A delay, which is like a stereo delay. A reverb.
These are quite familiar looking to the kind of Ableton type of scenario. So
yeah, absolutely. Now, I think the reverb is worth singling out as one of the effects that is that's very, very nice. Let's just solo one of these drum tracks a moment, and then we'll just let's just root that now. So in typical form, I'm just going to look in my effects here, and I'm going to drag a reverb into the slot. Into the send one slot here, and okay, let's get our. So I'm going to hit M for mixer. Oops, let's enable loop, and so send one. I think it's a very smooth reverb, very nice. It sounds.
Does it have a freeze function as well? Because that's the one thing I like about the Ableton reverb. I know, I'm making another comparison to Ableton, but
don't know, not
doesn't
sure.
Look like it. But that's sort of multi-band, isn't it? So we've got multiple bands of frequency response.
Yes. Make the low end. But it sounds pretty smooth to me.
Oh, and you can change the crossover. Oh, that's really...
Yeah. Width. We like a wide reverb.
Cavernous. And all of this presumably can be automatable as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And automation is what we're going to look at next. That's a very good point. So automation sort of kind of comes in two flavors. We've got the more traditional automation that we'd expect to see in the DAW. We've also got a thing called note expression, which is a way of sort of automating within a kind of...
That's the Cubase, that's the VST3.
Using Steinberg's kind of VST3 implementation, yeah. Let's first of all, though, just look at our automation. So in this case, let's, I'm going to use the Nectar here, and I'm going to, in the mixer mode, get the sends up, and I'm going to automate that reverb send. So we've got this right button here.
So you just had a little bit of send there.
Yeah. So now in our, we hit our little automation, and we can see here's our automation. Let's just make that a little bit bigger to work with, and let's zoom in a touch as well. So zoom in and grabbing on the...
Oh, and it gives you the overlay of the note events. That's neat.
Yeah, yeah. Now here's quite a nifty thing. If I hold down Alt or the and I can change the. Oh, it's difficult to see there. Let's make that. We can change the.
Oh, the curves, the Bezier between each point.
Yeah, Bezier curves. A little bit fiddly. That look there. I'm
nearly there.
I'm nearly there. I'm struggling a little bit with that. There we go. There we go. So we can make the Bezier curve change
between points, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Between points. Which,
well, that must be useful for thinning out automation as well, because if it's just going to just get a long fade with the right Bezier curve, you will rather than have multiple points on it.
Yes, that is true. So you know, so this automation pretty much works as you'd expect. If, for instance, now on this particular track, we sort of maybe let's just automate for the sake of argument a bit of the volume, for instance, as well. Nice...
Woo! That'll be a surprise for somebody in the mix.
Whoa.
Okay.
Now I can hit this, and it's like gives me a show all automation. So, you know.
All right. So you're seeing all of the. So we've got mix.
Yeah.
Right.
And what we can do as well is if we hit the star, we can essentially make one of the automations like a favorite. And then what that means is if we then take away the all, it'll always just show us whatever we've starred as a favorite.
Oh, okay. So that's handy, because if you've got a lot of stuff going on, then you can get straight to it.
Yeah, and I've not seen like a favourites in before in automation.
So that's free running.
Yes.
We've also got obviously the clip launch mode.
Yes, we have.
What happens with, because I mean obviously one of the big sells of the current Ableton is clip-based automation. Do we have the same?
Yes, it's very, and actually the implementation is quite similar. So the automation, it can either sort of follow. You can set up a loop points in the automation, or you can have the automation of the clip actually over like long. It can be decoupled from the clip length. So like that's quite neat. Then you can have like a 1 bar drum loop, for instance, but have 16 bars of automation.
Oh, that's interesting. Right.
So they can
interact. That's it. Right.
Yeah. So the way we do that is exactly the same kind of thing, really. If I get my device up, I'll just automate the output there, and let's just set that drum beat off here. Take off this send, and now the only difference is we've got to enable this automation. So it's the same looking thing, but it's just specifically
for recording automation.
For automation within the clip itself, yeah. So we can see I'm just adjusting it. There's a little pink circle that's just appeared on there, which is indicating that that parameter
is being automated.
Yeah. So that automation now, if I open up the editor, we've got the automation running along the bottom here, and as I kind of scroll through it, you can see
it's actually outside of the
yes, yeah. But we can set up loops starting of if I wanted.
Oh, so you've almost got a separate pattern editor for automation. So I suppose you could edit, say, something which was really fast, but I don't know, something or other that would be rhythmically relevant to the clip that you had. That's an interesting.
Yeah. But whilst we're in this mode, I think it's worth addressing the other type of automation which we've touched upon, which is this. Well, it's called note expression, but it's essentially is a sort of way of adding automations
per note.
Per note, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are the tool.
On the keyboard, right?
On the keyboard, right, yeah. One thing I just wanted to mention about that is, they're always the same. Like I know in Cubase, for instance, your shortcuts for the tools change depending on which window you're in, but this is always.
Well, one thing that's cool, like in Logic, you can have a straight click version of the tool and an alt click, so that you can have, say, a snip and a pencil, or you can have two very, very quickly.
Yeah, you can't do that on here, but the idea is that you can change between things. There are a few things actually I would like to mention about these tools. If I was to choose the pen tool and to sort of, as I click in, it adds what you'd expect. Now, if I clicked and dragged and added like one that's like a whole beat, every time I add them now,
so it's got a memory of.
It's a memory of the. And then if you click and keep your finger clicked on it, then you can resize it, and then it goes back.
Oh, right, that's nice and handy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And similarly, a different one is the eraser or rubber, as we prefer to say.
Perhaps not an American term that people would appreciate so much, but yes, has a different meaning.
Really?
I couldn't say what it was. I've heard. Right, so
the eraser, what you'd expect is you'd expect to click on and to erase the note, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But look what happens.
Oh, it's just erased by snap values.
Yeah. So, but look, if I was to drag, can you see the hatched sort of area there?
Yeah.
you know.
And what about key commands? If I click on a note here, does it select all of the ones and then you can just delete them? So it's very quick, right? Okay,
yes, it does.
Useful.
Yeah.
Those are those are the sort of things that if they're not implemented, you just kind of go, oh.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
so it's good to see
that
most, a lot of those things are here. But okay, so now I'm going to open the inspector on the side here, and it says here, no event selected. So what exactly is an event? Well, if I select one of the MIDI notes, a MIDI note is an event. So we've got a bunch of controls here, which is pertaining to that particular note there. So if I
gain, pan, pitch, and timbre.
Yeah, those are our sort of like note expression possibilities. Now there's a little, almost anonymous little icon right down here, that thing there. If I turn that on, that turns on the note expressions.
The lanes for it, right?
Yeah. Now, so these let you get in and do. Well, maybe pan is a better example in this case here, because we can go in and select pan values
for individual notes.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. But pitch ones are really nice as well, because you can sort of,
particularly for drums, I guess you've got all sorts of ways of.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about drums. But like you could have a chord, and then you could sort of have all the notes sort of move and bend into other chords.
Like slide steel guitar kind of stuff.
Yeah. So if we have a look here, I've got like a string part. Let's just put that up into this. So we enable this with a little icon up here. And we can see I've already drawn some in here. And
so that's actual pitch bend
it's
per
a
note.
Chord of, pitch bend per note. It's a chord of A. If I play that, we can hear that bend up.
So, I mean, that's a fairly simple example. Presumably you can get really gnarly and start...
Yeah, so I could just add more. Let's just
really
do some horrible random things here.
But the plugin or the instrument is the thing that has to understand this coming, and the devices in Bitwig do understand it.
And it's so I guess maybe this is why it only supports VSTs, because this is a VST specific thing, or VST3.
Go on then, let's see what that sounds like. It looks a bit fiddly. I mean, how is it to operate?
I think it's about getting used to it, really. I think just looking up here, this little icon up here, you could easily overlook that one.
It just toggles whether you can micro pitch.
And that toggles whether you can micro pitch. Exactly, yeah, exactly. So that's kind of cool. But this does actually lead me on to another thing. So we've talked about these note expressions and how that works on MIDI. But there's something that's quite important to understand when you're looking at audio. For us to bring in a drum loop or something, let's have a look here. Okay, so we've got a drum loop here. Let's just play that. Okay, so this would ordinarily be like fixed. You could just warp it, time stretch it, but Bitwig allows us, to sort of grab little sections of it, and then we can actually we can move them around, so we can.
Oh, cool. Can we have that in the big window? Can we see that's good?
Yeah, of course.
Big edit window.
Let's hit the edit button. Okay, so we can,
Right, so we can actually reorder.
Yeah, reorder the audio in the clip itself. And really mess it up.
Are you able to process the individual slices with sort of pitching or anything, or is it that it's just a question of moving it around in time?
Well, we've got our pitch. We could sort of, yes.
We could do it with the VST, right? The
active
note business.
No, this is a different thing. This is
oh, that'd be like a pitch automation.
Yeah, actually, that sounds quite cool. Let's put it.
Okay, but the ability to kind of reorder
exactly.
That's quite a new thing. Yeah.
And then you've got the warp markers. They call the transients in Bitwig. They call transients onsets. But if I stretch markers, if I turn stretch markers on,
stretch markers.
Stretch markers.
Oh, so you can really granularize. So you can get all BT.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And is that? I'm not familiar with Ableton. Is that something that's less immediate to do?
You can do it. I think it's just that. I think partly being able to sort of just rearrange the things
on the fly.
fly. So I think this could be one of the real selling points for people, I think, because it is
macro editing on a clip base.
That's quite
interesting.
Yeah, and because look, if I jump out of this, look, we're actually that clip. You see, that is in the session view, or the mixer view as they call it here. Here.
Right, gotcha.
So, so that's kind of like a pretty powerful thing. Now, with Bitwig, we could go on and on and on about all the things that it doesn't do. For instance, if I want to make a mix down, I was trying to do a mix down, and it was at the project was at 48K. I wanted to mix down to 44K.
Doesn't do sample rate.
It didn't. I went down to the so you've got the export audio, and
quite basic.
It's pretty basic. But it does allow you, however, though, to select
individual tracks and stems. Right, okay.
Yeah,
so you can bounce out stems if you need to.
Yeah,
right,
exactly. So, so it's kind of cool, but, so as I say, it does loads of stuff. It might not do a few things, but it does a load of stuff. So it's to try and balance it up from a review point of view it's quite hard in a way, because some of the new functions that it brings to the table that we've not really seen before in any software, it certainly makes it kind of like a worthwhile contender.
Absolutely.
But the absence of certain things that you might take for granted may also kind of counteract that. So it's a little bit like trying to balance up,
but chalk and cheese to some degree.
Yeah, but but my experience with it, I think, has been influenced a lot by using the Nectar, as I mentioned earlier, the Panorama, just because of its integrated nature of it, and that bodes well, I think, for the future, because it does have a good approach to working with controllers. It's got an interesting thing in the preferences. We can go into controllers, and there is like a kind of detect available controllers, almost like an auto button that you press, and then, I mean, in that case, I'd have pressed this and it would see the panorama, and it would automatically have set itself up. It kind of cuts out quite a few mouse clicks and a few sort of,
Well, that sort of stuff's important. I mean, the other thing that we mustn't forget is the stuff that we saw at the prototype stage, which is the under the hood kind of device editing, creation of instruments in a sort of macro level, almost like a reactor type level. Plus the ability to run sessions remotely and work with people over IP. This is all stuff to come, isn't it? And it's tempting, but that's not going to happen until version 2. And I'm guessing at the moment the guys are going to be working on maybe bringing out those little niggly things that people have come to expect that are probably quite easy to fix, but not always easy to remember to put in the first
That's right. I mean, it feels a little bit as well like it's slightly skewed towards MIDI over audio, slightly. I mean, and an example of that may be, Command T, which is like our shortcut for creating an audio track in Ableton Live, creates an instrument track, essentially a MIDI track, and like Command Shift and T creates an audio track. So it seems like there's a little hierarchy going on there, just favouring MIDI, and it seems to feel like that in a way. Because one thing I've noticed as well, I should mention just in a negative sense, is that when you've got a loop on the go, audio, and you kind of loop within it, you can get clicks.
Right, so it's like zero crossing point.
Yeah, now you have to manually select MIDI to turn on fade in and fade out. There is little, but it's not.
I guess things like that are, default settings and what have you.
Yeah, and I haven't found a way of changing the default settings, because I certainly don't want to hear clicks when I'm looping. So, it's little things like that. But I also understand that some people really don't want they think that the fades are going to affect the transients. Yeah, so I guess it's a.
It's what, okay. Well, anyway, I mean, we've covered an enormous amount of ground, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We have only just scratched the surface as well, I suppose, really. But,
there's a lot to it.
There's a lot to it, yeah, there is. But yeah.
So that's the end of our in-depth look at Bitwig. If you want to check out the first episode where we went over the kind of overview and the constituent parts, there will be a link here and also at the end of the show. I want to say thanks very much to Gaz Williams for taking a look at it for us, and that's it for this time. See you later.